Then
Good morning. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining our IMG webinar. Special thanks to Dr. Schuyler and our faculty for taking from their time to give advice to IMG today. Please keep on mute. This webinar will be recorded, and please type your questions in the chat and we will be happy to address them at the end. I will start by introducing our program director, Dr. Schuyler, who has been the UConn Neurology Residency Program Director for more than 10 years. She is also one of the American Academy of Neurology leaders and has been always advocating for international medical graduates. Dr. Schuyler, thank you for your time, and your mic is with you.
great. Thanks so much, Ahmed. So welcome. Thanks for joining us this morning. And we're so happy to have everybody who's interested in applying to neurology as an IMG. So we've done this webinar, actually this is our third time, and I think it's worked out really well. I know we do a lot of webinars, and there are a lot of webinars out there that are very program specific, where you get to just meet the program leadership and some of the residents, and that is actually coming up for us. We're going to be doing that this coming Monday. This is a separate webinar really, so that you can meet some of our IMG physicians who are currently our residents and faculty in our program, hear a little bit more straight from them about their experience becoming a neurologist and after having trained in their medical training in a country that is not the US, and to just kind of make the process a little bit more familiar to you and address any questions that you may have. Obviously, we are one program, so I can only speak as one program director. I can't speak to how other program directors or other faculty or residents are, kind of doing their recruitment process, but we do have some information that is agreed upon by all of our programs, and I'll put the link in the chat. We did come up with guidelines and recommendations for both programs and applicants to neurology, and we updated that for this year. It's posted on the AAN website, but while other people are talking, I'll go onto the website and find it and copy and paste it in the chat in case you haven't reviewed that. But that's very helpful information, and I recommend that all of you who are applying for neurology this upcoming year to review that in detail. It has a lot of helpful information, so you know the information that the programs and the applicants all have as recommendations, as well as links to important sites to help you figure out how many programs you should apply to, what the match rate is in neurology, and get very specific information. And the links are within that virtual recruitment recommendation statement. So I encourage all of you to review that. There's also other resources that are available to you through the AAMC. There's a lot of information, for example, about the supplemental ERAS. I've given some webinars about that as well. But the AMC has very helpful information, giving instructions about the new portions of the application that we weren't using prior to this year. And then there's some other information. We have a lot of our previous webinars are on our UConn Neurology YouTube channel. So we have many of our webinars that we've done in the last 2 years are all posted there. Also, I have as my pinned tweet on Twitter, I have an interview that I did for Inside the Match for a podcast. And a lot of people have listened to that. And I've gotten good feedback that it's helpful for applicants. So I encourage you to listen to that as well. So on that note, I'd like to turn things over to our panelists. Dr. Daniel Asad will be kind of going through and introducing our speakers. And he's a new faculty in our program and a former chief resident. So he's very well positioned to give you advice, both as an IMG and as well as somebody who's recently completed residency training, recently completed fellowship. He just completed his fellowship at Mass General in vascular neurology, and now as a new faculty. So he'll be kind of moderating some portions of the session. But first thing we'll be going through, we have some great faculty and residents from our program that will all be talking for a few minutes to tell you about their background and give you some advice. So welcome to everybody that's here.
Hello, thank you so much, Dr. Schuyler, and thank you to our residents and our faculty panelists, and welcome everyone. First of all, congratulations on choosing the coolest specialty that there is. So good job on that. Obviously, we're not biased, but what we will basically be doing is that I will obviously try to give you my sort of 2 cents of advice as well. I am happy to have some colleagues who have, not even much more experience than I am, but probably a different story and different sort of tips and advice to give to all of you. What I'll start with is that we'll start with one of our faculties, and we'll have some mix and match of faculty and residents. First of all, I'm going to introduce our faculty, our neuro-ophthalmology faculty at UConn, Dr. Lakshmi Lesangtham. I will turn the floor to her to give some advice to her. She's a neuro-ophthalmologist at UConn. I have had the pleasure of training under her and learned a lot from her as well during my residency training. And I'd be happy to hear what, how her journey looked. And if you can tell us a little bit about your background and how you decided on neurology and neuro-ophthalmology, and what helpful advice you have for our attendees today. Dr. Lesangtham.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for choosing this program to know more about our IMG information. UConn is a great program, and I'll talk about it in a few seconds. First, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm currently a faculty here as an assistant professor. I joined UConn about 2 years ago after my fellowship. I'm originally from India. Everybody gets surprised with that. But I did my med school in India, and then I did my ophthalmology residency in India, and I practiced there for 2 years, after which I moved to the US. And here I first started with volunteering for different programs and got into an IR research. So I was in interventional radiology for some time. That's where I kind of decided to go into neurology. And after I joined neurology, I tried different fellowship options, but I kind of felt my heart going back to neuro-ophthalmology. So I went back to neuro-ophthalmology, and I finished my training at Stanford, finished my training in 2020, and I joined UConn here. So I guess it's been a great journey, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else. But I do have a few pearls for you guys on my journey. It depends, when you are interviewing, I would say be well prepared. If you have to take 2 suits, be prepared with 2 suits. So if one gets damaged on the way, you have an extra. These are simple, like practical tips, I would say. Be nice to everybody, even the lowest of the lowest. People see you for what you are. Just be natural, and be on time. Other thing that helped me, because you're going to be interviewing with a lot of programs. So I had an Excel sheet that I kept, and I kept my top priorities, location, number of specialties, what you're looking into. Helps to be very focused, what specialty you're looking for. There are people who have families that are important. This is a place where I have family that will be helpful for me, a big support for me during my residency. Transport, airport, especially your IMGs, all those things are taken into account. One of the big things at UConn is also a very IMG friendly program. So we do have G1 waivers here. Myself, I'm doing my G1 waiver here. So a lot of us here have that, opportunity here. So which, if you want to, if any of you go into that visa, you're always available to have many good mentors here who can help you guide in that way. So at the end of my interview season, I was able to grade and kind of see which program got the highest grade and what's my most important factor in all of them. A lot of little factors come into account. What else? I think those are my top big pearls. There's a lot of practice your interviews. What is most important about you? Sometimes you're anxious, you start blabbering things out there. So try to be focused, simply like I said, I'm from this place this year. This is my main goal. Be clear in your goals, I would say. Many programs don't have neuro-ophthalmology. So I think I would say UConn, the neurology program here is amazing. I have seen my residents have more exposure to different subspecialties here than my own program that I train with. So I would say this is a great program. I would close my speech here, Daniel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lesangtham, and that's very helpful, I think, for the applicants to know as well. Your helpful advice about maintaining an Excel sheet and keeping a record of all the interviews. And I think it's very sort of reassuring for a lot of applicants who have already done their specialty training abroad and are trying to come to the US, that you had already done your training, and and I think that probably gave you an added advantage, having trained with some of my former co-residents who were also like specialty trained even before starting residency, was something that was also very sort of encouraging. And also, I think so if there are any applicants in the who are IMGs who are already specialty trained and are coming to pursue sort of residency training in the US, people like Dr. Lay Sanktham obviously are a good role model. Thank you so much, Dr. Lay Sanktham. I will now ask my friend and colleague, Dr. Tapan Mehta. Dr. Mehta is also one of our former chief residents, again, somebody who I have learned a lot from and continue to learn from. He obviously finished his residency training at the UConn Neurology Hartford Hospital program, and then went on to do a dual fellowship in stroke as well as interventional neurology at the University of Minnesota, and is now serving as faculty in our program. I'm sure he'll have a lot of insight to provide. Dr. Mehta.
Thank you, Daniel. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can. And thank you for joining while you're on call.
No problem. Good morning, everyone. This has been an amazing experience. I left India first time ever in my life when I came to United States, and there were a lot of information coming across that people do get into residency, people don't get into residency, you cannot get in university program. There is going to be problem with visa and everything. So one advice I would give you, that if you want to pursue something, you will be able to achieve here. And that's not just from my experience, that's from all the colleagues I have here and also outside University of Connecticut. I met so many people in past 10 years, and all of them have been able to achieve their goals as long as they were very persistent with what they wanted, and they kept on trying for it. You will also get information on the USMLE scoring system is changing, and it will be difficult for IMG. I don't think that that is a reality, as you can see in our program. Dr. Schuyler has always been welcoming for
Dr. Mehta, I think there's a little
foreign
lag
medical
in your voice.
graduates. We are considered an asset here. And we really work hard and we prove our worth. One of the most important thing I would say is, and you if you have your goals clear, and USMLE scores are gone away at this point, so you need to have a profile that also stands up for your work in the field, volunteering.
I think we may have lost Dr. Mehta. Dr. Mehta is actually on call, and I wonder if he's in the IR suite, and he was kind enough to join us. We will try to contact him and try to get him back online. But again, as he said, a couple of things to keep in mind would be to obviously the basics of like the USMLE step scores and having like your resume with your academic profile. But the other thing that he focused on was volunteering and having a well-rounded resume that will help all applicants, which obviously makes you stand out, specifically as an IMG as well. So that's something to sort of keep in mind and highlight in your resume. So thanks, Dr. Mehta, and we'll try to contact him and see if he can join us again.
Daniel, sorry, I got cut off.
No worries, no worries. I was just summarizing what you were saying. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, I think I know I have lost some time here, but I just want to encourage everyone that when I was transitioning from India to US, there were a lot of difficulties and hurdles, and everything you should be able to come over. There are a lot of people here to help you. And even if you are pursuing difficult fellowships, difficult careers, it all is possible. And I want to sell our program as a brand, that our program is one of the most successful programs who has produced more neurointerventionists than any other program in the entire country. And all the neurointerventionists graduated from this program are very successful. They are in different practices, academic, private practice. Some of them have started their own programs. So, cheers to our program, Dr. Schuyler and leadership. And I hope to meet some of you when you come for interviews.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Tapan. We will now move on to some specific sort of questions that I had, and we thought that perhaps our fantastic residents would be the ones to help you, because they're so much closer to the application cycle and how they applied recently. So without further ado, I'll first ask one of our chief residents, Dr. Shivani Sudani. Shivani is one of our chief residents who is about to graduate in a few months and is going to pursue a clinical electrophysiology EEG fellowship at Cleveland Clinic. And obviously has had a very successful ride, both as a resident, obviously as an applicant because she was selected. I will pass on the floor, the virtual floor, to Dr. Sudani. And how about, I was wondering that I know a lot of people have probably already applied, but some of you who might be applying, I think, Shivani, it'd be helpful for them to hear about like how you approached the USMLE, how you timed it during your medical school, because obviously the length and the timing can be different in different countries, and how you pursued that. So would you be able to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Asad. Hi, guys. My name is Shivani, one of the PGY4s, like Dr. Asad mentioned. So I'm born and raised in India. I did my med school there, and sort of early in the med school. So there are like few applicants who already know that they want to pursue USMLE and sort of move to US for their residency. But I was not one of them. I did not know. I knew about neurology well before when I was doing my basic sciences, but I did not know that I wanted to move to US. That was sort of in the latter half of my medical school. So ideally, what you would want to do is most of the, and correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the like med school sort of duration is about 6 years or so. And the first 2 years or 2.5 years are like dedicated for basic sciences. And ideally, you would want to take your step one like right after that so that it's fresh. And then after the next few years and before, at least in India, we do like a year of internship that we have to do mandatory before graduating. And before that or during that, I would suggest to do the step 2 CK. And during that internship period, you can also apply for like medical student electives here and essentially see how the system works. And while you do those electives right after that, I think the step 2 CS is very helpful because you've had some interaction over here with sort of just the population and just see how everything is done over here. But obviously not everybody's ideal. I never really knew. So I essentially took my step 1 like towards the end of my medical school. Essentially, I would say that the preparation, obviously we never really feel prepared, right? For any exam, any time you feel is like less. But if you're closer to the first 2 years, then I would say about 4 to 5 months of preparation of step 1 would be decent enough. If you're towards the end of the med school, I would say about 6 months, then about 3 months for step 2 CK. And CS is usually about 2 weeks is good enough if you've done some sort of elective here. I know with COVID and stuff, like everything has changed. I applied pre-COVID. But if you've had some exposure even virtually over here, and I think one, like few of my other colleagues who've done this virtually can sort of better guide that. But the other thing that I did when I was in India was I used to rotate with like neurologists outside of my hospital as well. So that definitely counted as some experience and sort of to gain some more knowledge as well too, because neurology itself is a very sort of subspecialized field. The other thing I guess I would mention while selecting the program would be that look at the residents. at least for me, that was very, very helpful. I remember Dr. Asad was there during my pre-interview dinner. And I think it's just the residents who essentially, obviously the faculty, but they, like, you work constantly with them, you learn from them so much. And just the overall environment sort of is set because of the residents. And if you essentially feel that you're a fit over there, then select that program, because you have to stay over there, you have to learn over there, you grow over there. So, but that's really it. Yeah.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much, Shivani. And obviously, as Dr. Schuyler mentioned in this chat, that now, depending on where you went to med school, the CS has been replaced by OET, which obviously you can find resources abroad, online as well. So that was very helpful, and I wanted to do that. And now I'll go back, and we'll obviously keep shuttling between faculty and residents. I wanted to ask our colleague, Dr. Yasir Tajali, if he could share his experience as an applicant. And I know it's been a few years, but Dr. Tajali, we'd be happy to hear a little bit about your background, your journey, and what advice do you have for our applicants, IMG applicants?
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm gonna just talk about like the journey I actually, the path I got to this point that I am now. It might be similar to some of you guys, might not, but it might be helpful. So I'm type of person that actually worked for a couple of years before deciding to come to United States. So I finished my school in Iran, Isfahan University of Medical Sciences, and then worked for a couple of years. And then after that, actually, my family decided to move, so I decided to move as well. So it's very different from the ones that they were like being in the medical school, started studying to come to United States. And of course, it makes it a little bit harder too, because you're after a couple of years, you want to just start reading USMLEs again. And then it's not very easy at the time. So I came to US while I was studying. So it was important to stay clinically active, especially because you're marked as old grad. So you don't want to have any gaps. So I started to try to find to do some rotations, some things that it is kind of clinical, and it was hard to find. Lots of places it was really hard to find doing shadow or anything like that. But the advice I have is that I did not limit myself to just go to the university-based program. I was doing different types of shadowing, different type of practice, private university. And my goal was to get to neurology. So I was not able to find all my rotation in neurology, but I was trying to find the rotations that kind of similar, or when I become a resident, so I have to do those parts as well. Like, for example, some internal medicine, some psychiatry, some field around. At the same time, I was studying as well. And then I found out about a program in Case Western, actually at the time, it was the EEG, kind of like 3 months comprehensive course. And then I joined that program and really enjoyed that. And I think the reason that now I became a hepatologist, I think that's the main trigger for that. Because initially when I was thinking about neurology, I was thinking mainly about dementia because of my background work in Iran. And then from there, that was the time I was interviewing, and I stayed there as the research fellowship until I get accepted to the residency. So about the interviews, you guys, lots of groups that you guys are joined, and lots of information between IMG goes back and forth, which is helpful, and sometimes it is really stressful. So be careful about those information, because I remember at the time, for example, one program started giving interviews, the other one not, and then those back and forth messages sometimes makes stress. It is good to know what it is, but just do what it is right to do. Don't worry about that. Like your application, the places that you like to be sure that you're sending everything right. And I remember so that I wanted, like, for example, I wanted to prepare myself for the interviews, and then so talking to different people, and also it was a book I read about that in this field. And again, I got good information, but like, to be honest with you, at the first interview I had, I was like trying to be like what that book said, and then I didn't like the way that it was. So I was like, my advice to you guys is just to be yourself. To be yourself, and then when you are yourself, you can present yourself way better. And you want to stay in that place for 4 years. You want to be sure that that's a place that fit to what you want, and it's going to be for sure the same for the people that are interviewing you. And so I interviewed in neurology, and I also interviewed in internal medicine as well, mainly for the prelim programs. But I did some categoricals, as you know, like it's a different people have different experience. But I was like thinking about that with the background I have, like this is another way to get into the like American medical system, and then after that try to get to neurology. So after all those stressful time of interviews and everything, I finally got accepted in residency at Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School. Had good 4 years of residency over there, and then for fellowship, at the time I was applying, so I was looking for the different places. I have some research background, so NIH was the place that actually I decided to go, and I went to National Institute of Health for fellowship for 2 years for clinical neurophysiology and epilepsy. And when I was in residency, actually, like, so I was interested in neurology because of dementia, and then in my residency, I was interested in neurology. Like, I was like at the beginning, oh, stroke looks very cool, and it is cool. And then, and then before that, I did epilepsy, and then I was like, now I have different options to choose. And then they're like, you will get to the point when you go ahead and you experience each different like part of the neurology, you will see which one actually fit you better. And so that was the reason I decided epilepsy, and I'm really happy about the decision I made. And I just started working here like a week ago. I'm very fresh here, and all I can say about this place, the things that I can tell you that you cannot find on the website, is that I see the warm people, caring people here, and they try to help you in any way you can. As a new fresh attending, of course you have to get to know the system as well, and I all I saw was like helping to know everything, and then get to start to understand the system and start your actual work. And thank you for the time you give me to talk.
Thank you so much, Yasir. Thank you to Dr. Tajali for such helpful advice. And I think your journey is like testament to the fact that, you know, with like sort of dedication and persistence, one can like achieve sort of their goals, as Dr. Mehta said earlier as well. One question that often comes up and a lot of applicants ask us is about like how to get electives and observerships in US clinical experience, which is a big sort of thing that people sort of worry about and ask, and also which programs to apply to. And I was thinking that our chief resident, Dr. Ahmad Al-Mashad, if you can share your thoughts as well. Ahmad is obviously one of our PGY4s and one of our chief residents who is going to pursue a stroke fellowship at Yale, and then onwards to an interventional neurology fellowship in New York. So Ahmad, if you could tell us a little bit about those things, about how you looked for electives and observerships, and also how you chose which programs or which geographical areas to apply to.
Thank you, Dr. Assad, and thanks everybody for joining. I know most of you are already like applying this year, but for whoever wants to know, like usually it's very important to take your step one score, or get your step one score before applying for electives or observerships. Most programs require that. And of course, like it's very important to do electives or like rotations in the specialty that you're applying for, because this will tell the program that you're really interested in that specialty. Of course, if you probably like you're not gonna find like all rotations in neurology, but like if you do medicine, it's still gonna be helpful. But try to get as much as you get in like in the specialty that you're applying for. there is no right time to apply. Of course, like you don't have to have like US clinical experience 100%. I have some of my co-residents probably didn't come to United States before residency. However, it helps to build your CV. It's very important to tell the program that that I'm really interested in this specialty and I want to pursue that. One thing probably like, I know like it's not essential, but this is my personal experience. I did 1 year of research. The research itself or the publication doesn't matter that much. When you apply for residency, nobody's expecting you to have publications before. I personally had 0 publications before when I was applying for residency, but that here is very important because it helps you to get used to the system, helps you to get used to the electronic medical records, how to navigate like Epic, how to present patients. You can attend the clinics and like supervise or like be with the with your supervisor in the clinical setting. And this is like really helpful in getting to know the system. So getting to the more important question about like which programs you have to apply for. As foreign graduate, of course, like most of you are not going to be like restricted geographically, like in a certain area. Like when I was applying, I applied to all good programs. I applied to a lot of programs. I applied to almost like 80 programs. And usually this is different from an American medical graduate because like they only have to apply for probably 25. For us, it's a different story. And of course, like each person is different or each applicant is different because like it's, if you have like a great CV, like with great scores, you don't have to apply that much. But if you have like a normal CV, like everyone, and you have like some experience, it's better to apply as much as you can, but make sure you apply for programs that are gonna take you. So for example, if you look up the program and you see like that this program does not take international medical graduates, so it's not gonna change that much like this year, and like if they have like 0% IMGs, so don't waste your money and apply for that program. Try to look each program you're applying for. And I think like when I was applying, there was a website called Freda. I don't know if it's still present or not, but it used to tell us like the percentage of IMGs in each program. And this is very helpful. So you can like focus on the programs that take IMGs. After I applied, like I got interviews. In that case, like I was like trying to choose the program based on the location and based on the interest that I was like in the specialty that I wanted to pursue after residency. I knew I wanted to do like stroke and interventional, so I was looking for the program that would help me to pursue that. I know I knew at the time it was very competitive, so as Dr. Mehta mentioned, that like our program is very successful in producing neurointerventionalists. So I was focusing on that programs. Try to email the programs that you are interested in. If you have like specific interest to a certain program, like contact the program director or contact the residents, specifically residents who are from the same background, to tell you more about the program, tell you what they offer, and you can tell them also like that you're very interested and this is one of the top priority. Otherwise, like I don't have like as a foreign graduate, just try to look all the programs, any program that may take foreign graduates, just apply for, and then you think about geographical, think about the interest. And if you're not interested in a specific specialty, which is like very common when you apply for residency, try to go to a program which has all subspecialties represented, because like you will have exposure in everything. And also that's why like I also choose UConn, because like they have attendings in all subspecialties. Even like neuro-ophthalmology is one of the specialties that you cannot find, like all programs have this specialty, in addition to I think neuro-oncology. So try to do that as well. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, and just like be hopeful. Most of you, if not all of you, hopefully are gonna match, but try to be positive and do your best. And like, as Dr. Mehta mentioned, if you wanna do something, you'll be able to do it. I had like some struggles in the beginning when I was applying for the match, but I improved my CV and then I got a lot of interviews and I ended up matching here. Thank you, Dr. Assad.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ahmed. That was very helpful. One additional thing, and I think Dr. Schuyler also mentioned in the chat, is as Ahmed mentioned, how to get information. And I think program websites are a place that, usually have the most up-to-date information. Also, I'm sure since you guys joined this webinar, a lot of you are already on social media, but I think harnessing the power of the social media and keeping track with all the information that is on Twitter, and other sort of social media sort of platforms is something that will also help you to get some more information about these things, including observership and elective opportunities. I think another question or thing that as an IMG applicant, I felt and I also was interested to know was about personal statements in the ERAS sort of resume. And that's something that obviously is basically your face to the program. And I was hoping that one of our senior residents, Dr. Gupta, would be able to sort of share her insight when she applied for it. Shreya is one of our third-year residents, one of our senior residents who's interested in neurocritical care and will be pursuing that as a career, and will be applying this year. So Shreya, what advice would you have for how you approached your personal statement and sort of filling out the ERAS sort of resume section or application?
Thanks, Dr. Asad. Hi, everyone. This is Shreya, and I'm from India. And I think that's important to actually have a personal statement. Personally, as foreign graduates, I don't think we're actually taught on the importance or like how to write personal statements, what they have an impact on. So I did have to ask a lot of people, my seniors back home in med school, as to what they wrote as their personal statements. Some of your seniors might be actually be willing to share their statements as well. And that kind of helped me as a format or as a background on what to base them on. You can even find sample statements just as to know how you can get started on those. And it's not what what you've done or on your CV that you put on your personal statement. The program is actually looking for what you are as a person in your personal statement. They want to know if they match you in their program, if they hire you, essentially what you're going to add to their program. So essentially that's what they're looking for, and how passionate you are, I guess, because as foreign graduates, I'm assuming for most of us, it's true that we're leaving our families, our countries, to follow our passions, to pursue our careers. And that's what they're actually looking for as to what particular interests you hold. And it's not that you need to have a specific interest. Say, I actually was interested in interventional before I applied, but you actually develop interests while you're doing your residency to see what is more garnered to you specifically, what you like, what you are actually good at. And you change that. So it's not that you need to definitely have that, oh, I am actually interested in just this. You can say that you are exploring yourself, yet you still want to see what these specialties offer. So basically, it's just a reflection of yourself. And I think for a lot of us, English not being our first language, that can be a barrier sometimes too. And it's nothing to shy about from. You basically can have guidance from, again, your seniors back home in your medical school who pursued this. There might be other I think places. I'm not aware of what every country will be able to offer, but to basically improve on those skills as to how to placate your thoughts in a way that it is the other person gets that as soon as they read it. A lot of times, I think in personal statements, people start with their background stories. Oh, I had this relative, had this to this, but you don't necessarily need to have a story or a sad story that push you into medicine. You basically just need to kind of pour your heart in the sense that what made you choose neurology. And I guess from a CV aspect, a lot of times there are a lot of misconceptions that if you do this, that'll add to your CV. You have to have research, but I never had any research before I applied. So it's not that you need to do this, need to do that. It definitely helps, as I think Dr. Mehta also mentioned, to do volunteer work. It's not that you need to do that as in that just for your CV, but to actually make sense, to follow what you're wishing for, or what let's say a year ago or some time ago you thought, oh, that might be a nice cause, I might actually contribute something meaningful to it. So those kind of things, so that let's say when a interview person is reading your CV, they read through what you did in that work, and they can appreciate okay, they were actually involved in this process. They did this to like help something further. So that kind of things are what I think programs are mostly looking for. And apart from that, like a lot of times, like the hobbies aspect or the social aspect in yourself, you don't really like feel like worth mentioning, but I think that's one of the other big important things as well. Like it's always at the back of the mind, we're all people, so we want to interact with people, and you want to know what that person is as like outside of the medical field, and to explore, to let the program know in such a way that you love doing this, you love exploring these kind of things. Some people love hiking, biking, painting. So kind of like detailing a little bit on like what, like if you're particularly interested in some kind of field or art form or whatever, that I think is also a big aspect. And you actually remember people more by like, oh, like that person was a debate champion, or like that person was like did excellent painting. So I think that also like counts as a big aspect, but definitely Dr. Schuyler, Dr. Asad can add on to like things that I might not have mentioned, but
That's very helpful, Shreya, and I loved what you said, that you don't have to share your deepest, darkest trauma, unfortunately. And I don't know, and that's something I've spoken to Dr. Schuyler about. You do not need to share like a sad story to get the hook or attention. Some of the, I remember specifically, to give an example, where Dr. Schuyler mentioned one of the statements that she still remembers to this day is about somebody either making pizza or taking karate lessons or something like that. And, these are the things that basically stand out. In terms of making a well-rounded resume and stuff, my personal story, which I think has worked, was I not only had a gap in my resume because I ended up taking a teaching job as a debate and public speaking coach for a couple of years after graduating med school. And a lot of people advised me against it. And funnily enough, not only residency interviews, my fellowship interviews, including some of my job interviews, were all about that. So it's all about like people want to just know about that rather than, and I'm sometimes wondering, can you ask me about my research and other stuff? No. So that's, as Shreya mentioned, a well-rounded resume helps as well. In the interest of time, I'll move on to another sort of question, which I think is often brought up, is about the letters of recommendation. And I was wondering if one of our other senior residents, Juan Cabrera, Juan is from Ecuador, one of our fantastic residents and I was wondering, Juan, how you approached which letters of recommendations you used, apart from obviously the mandatory sort of ones or your dean's letter, but other letters, that how you chose them and how you approached people who wrote them for you.
Thank you, Dr. Asad. Hi, everyone. My name is Juan. I am originally from Ecuador. And just like a lot of people mentioned in this panel, everyone has their own personal experience, and maybe your journey will be somewhat different from what everyone else tells you. Definitely for me, it was a little bit different in the sense that when I finished my medical school, I knew that I wanted to do neurology, but I really didn't know that much about the medical system here in the United States. But at some point, I ran into some colleagues that actually knew people that came to the US, and I was very interested in the way that residency worked and the way that the USMLE steps were designed. So I decided after my medical school that I wanted to come here to do the steps, and then I applied for residency. Regarding the letters of recommendation, there are some points that are important that we need to know about them. Definitely, without a doubt, we know that the letters of recommendations are one of the most critical parts of the application. Specifically to who should you ask for a letter, it's very important to ask for a letter of recommendation to someone that you've worked with, someone that knows you both in a professional and personal level, that can describe your work ethic and also how you are as a person. Because sometimes what some people do that might be a flaw in their application is that they do some paid rotations sometimes, because sometimes there are some businesses that will sell you rotations, and sometimes you don't get to build good rapport with any attending or physician in the US. And sometimes what happens is that they will not be writing a letter of recommendation, or that sometimes they will just generate a generic letter of recommendation, which wouldn't be the most beneficial for your application. So you should ask for a letter of recommendation to someone that you've worked with, that it knows you, again, in a personal and a professional level. And this letter of recommendation should reflect how you are as a person. So in my case, for example, I had the opportunity to do some clinical US experience here. And also I did some observerships. So I got to work with some physicians here. And I worked with them for a couple of months. And I think that that time working with them actually it demonstrated who I was, and that is once you have a good rapport with someone, you can approach in a polite manner and just ask them for a letter of recommendation. The worst that they can say is no, but at the same time, you know that at least you will try. And again, one of the important things as well regarding the letters of recommendation is that you should have at least a letter of recommendation from a US physician in the specialty that you want to apply for, in this case, neurology. And again, I had the chance to work with a couple of neurologists here and also back in Ecuador. So those are kind of some main aspects of the letters of recommendation that I can talk about.
Perfect. That's again very helpful. Again, I obviously it's been a while since I applied, but remember that a good personalized recommendation letter is always helpful. Always, obviously, most like recommendation letters are like waived. But if you think that no matter what specialty they're in, of course, if you're applying to neurology, having a neurology one is better. But I also ended up using one from one of my internal medicine rotations because I had a good time working with them, and I thought that they would write me a good recommendation letter. So that's helpful. Thank you so much, Juan. And I think one of the another important sort of area to focus on, which I think one of our PGY2 residents is uniquely positioned to answer, is about Zoom interviews and the etiquette of Zoom interviews. Dr. Balabhadra is one of our PGY2 residents who's from India, and he interviewed during obviously one of the most challenging times the world has ever faced during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. And Anvesh, I was curious to hear what tips do you have for our applicants, IMG applicants, especially Zoom etiquette and how you set the thing up. And if I'm not sure if you were in the US when you interviewed, but if there was a time difference, how did you navigate that?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Asad. So, can you guys hear me? I feel like my voice is sort of weird. I'll take that as a yes.
We can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was kind of challenging actually initially because we weren't really sure.
I think we may have lost Anvesh. Very briefly, while Anvesh logs in, and I'll obviously feel free to jump in if any of the other residents have advice. Having done Zoom webinars, and Dr. Schuyler, it'd be helpful if you also chip in. Obviously, like having like a professional or a plain background, dressed as professionally as you could is important. Having like a good stable internet connection, which is evident from a lot of webinars and seminars that you've attended, is very important. The other thing is having a good microphone or a laptop with a stable microphone is something to always sort of check and double check before that. I think Anvesh is back.
Yeah, sorry.
Anvesh, please go ahead.
UConn Wi-Fi kicked me out.
Yeah. And as Dr. Schuyler said in the chat, everyone is used to technical difficulties. I interviewed half of my fellowship interview on Zoom. It was in the middle of it that half of them got converted. And a lot of program directors and interviews were very flexible. In fact, some of them said, can we FaceTime you? You know, so don't worry about that. It doesn't have no bearing on, you know, who you are as a person or what your interview is. But please go ahead, Anvesh.
Yeah, sorry, my wife, I was sort of unstable. Anyway, I actually interviewed from India when all of this was going on. I wasn't sure if I was able to travel. It was difficult getting flights and stuff, but fortunately everything became virtual. And it was extremely challenging because they're like different time zones, especially here, like for interviewing somewhere in the east, the west, somewhere in the central time zone. What I did personally was I made a separate calendar and I had to convert all of that to the Indian Standard Time Zone. And what that meant was for that essential interview season, I was sort of reverse cycling sleep. I was interviewing at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, and then you also have like the pre-interview dinners that are also at like very early in the morning. And I feel like there's a small, the room for error is very big, especially because there are multiple time zones, multiple things that you attend to. But later on, I did feel that if I started syncing it onto my phone, it just automatically reminded you. So that was mechanically, there was no way you could go wrong. And it was also like very, I think my class was like the first class that did the virtual session. So it was like very difficult to know like what we were actually supposed to do to set up for the virtual interview. But I think what helped me the most was I actually tested my whole setup with a friend before I actually started interviewing. What that meant was finding a good, clean, quiet space. I know like some institutions offer those to their students. I just happened to have a decent one at home. And what, in addition to all of that, we often like take care, like, is your lighting good enough at home? Is it not? How is your microphone? How's the camera? But I felt what I did was I got a ring light. I put it right behind me, like behind the screen. But it does get weird if you have like glasses that reflects on your glasses. People sort of see circles in your eyes. But and it's very important to like check the microphone, especially because like depending on like how close, how far you are, what kind of room you're in, what kind of panels you have behind you, you can create sort of an echo, which initially happened for me. So like I had to like change things around, and that sort of worked out as well. But I think my biggest advice would be like to treat it as like an in-person interview, and sort of just be yourself, have fun. Yeah, that was about it. But I think like making sure like you test your setup before going forward to the interview is very important. And I think like and I think Schuyler put out a link in the chat box that sort of explains all of these things in detail.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much, Anvesh. And hopefully people, that's very helpful. I think people will, it will be obviously good to sort of practice before as well. In the interest of time, I just want to open the floor for Dr. Schuyler, actually. Dr. Schuyler, obviously, as most of you know, has been part of some national and international initiatives for IMGs, and generally the whole application process from as part of heading the Neurology Program Directors Consortium and other sort of leadership roles. Dr. Schuyler, I was curious to see if there's anything you would like to add to the application process, how you view applications or like sort of review applications as a program director, and what are some helpful tips for IMGs so that they can obviously make an impression for the program director, one of the obviously the most important people who will be reviewing their applications.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. It's great advice from all the faculty and the residents. So I like for this webinar to be mostly you all talking, not me. And I tried to answer some of the questions in the chat. And I just want to thank you for your kind words. I just, you know, this is, I think our workforce is such a big part of our US workforce is international physicians. And I think, as you know, and from, you know, looking at the work that I've done and, you know, the education that we try to do for programs and institutions and faculty. Kind of my goal in that is to have all department chairs and faculty and anybody who's working either with trainees or hiring faculty that are international physicians are familiar with the process and able to advise their trainees and mentees in terms of how to be successful. And so I think that's really something that I've worked on for many years now. So just in terms of applying for residency, I think our faculty and our residents are amazing. They give you a lot of helpful advice. And I think just from my perspective, the review process is meant to be holistic. And obviously I can't speak to how other programs review their applications, but there's not sort of like one magic word or one magic thing, because people ask me that all the time, like how do I differentiate myself? And there's not one thing. You are all different people. You all have unique paths to how you have gotten to medicine, how you've selected neurology. And so really what you need to do in your application is to communicate that to programs, right? And when I read an application, I'm not looking for a particular score. I'm not looking for a particular graduation date. I'm not looking for a particular research or volunteer experience. I'm looking for information for you as a person. I'm looking to make sure, actually, probably most importantly, that you are explaining well why you are interested in our field, because a lot of times applications, one of the things I can see through pretty easily is if you're applying sort of to multiple specialties in neurology, may not be your first choice, right? So I do get applications that to me look like an internal medicine application. and that's somebody, even if they have like a 200 million on their CK, like I'm not gonna invite them, because to me, it looks like an internal medicine application. So if you're interested in neurology, make that clear to the programs in however you need to do that. Also, my other piece of advice, I know we're going over time. My other piece of advice, well, I've got a couple, but another piece of advice would be to be honest in your application and think about your audience. So I've been a neurologist for almost 20 years. So I know a lot about neurology. So and the same thing probably with other program directors, you're probably going to have some chairs and other sort of more senior faculty reviewing essays and interviewing. Make sure that if you're going to present a patient or you're going to describe a clinical situation in your essay, that it's accurate. So I cannot tell you how many times, because oftentimes sort of the old school neurologists that are interviewing will ask you to present a case, or they'll ask you, especially if you talked about a case in your essay, to elaborate more on that case. And so if your localization is incorrect on that essay, like that's a problem. So, so I'm not saying that you should understand neuroanatomy fully. That's why, why you're applying to neurology residency. You want to learn this stuff and we want to teach it to you, but just be aware that the people reviewing your essay and your application are experts in the field that you're applying to. So just to kind of keep that in mind, I think that's a common pitfall. Sometimes I see an essay or a description of a research experience that doesn't seem completely straightforward when just in terms of the description of it can seem exaggerated, because I think most of us also do research or are involved in scholarly activity to some degree. So if you were, the 18th author on a paper, that's awesome. You worked on a research project, but don't, exaggerate your role in the project per se, because it's kind of obvious. So you really need to just be very straightforward about sort of your experiences and your role, and just be honest. Don't try to exaggerate anything. So that would be my other kind of advice. And also just know when you're going to do your interviews and stuff, that the people interviewing you, they're just like us, right? So you just met, a handful of faculty and neurology residents. This is like what you're going to do, right? So you're on a Zoom meeting. We're people, like we're just like regular human beings, like we're neurologists, like we're neurology residents and faculty, but we're all like regular people. We all, so be prepared to talk about what we see in your application outside of medicine. Okay. So a lot of times, like we talk neurology, that's like talking shop for us. That's what we do all the time. Right. So if I see that you have a really interesting hobby, like I might want to talk to you about it, or focus sort of on your interests or your, other stuff that's outside of neurology per se. So be ready to, speak on those topics. Also, don't exaggerate there either, because if you put like you're a Dungeons and Dragons, like dungeon master, I don't know, like something like that, be ready for your interviewer to be like the ultimate dungeon master of their whatever. So, and they're going to ask you about it. So just make sure that, you're prepared to that you're putting stuff on your application that you're really prepared to have kind of a human conversation about. So, and it's fun. So that's my last thing. And I guess we'll stop after this, and hopefully I tried to get to some of the questions in the chat. And I think most of the answers, if I haven't gotten to them, are in either the virtual statement or the other webinar I gave, which was like an hour-long talk pretty much about supplemental ARS and virtual interviewing. Like I talked for an hour about that. That webinar is basically me talking for an hour, answering a lot of these questions. So I would recommend you watch that. But just, this should be fun. Part of doing this webinar is to make this seem more accessible. Like this is kind of what you're going to be doing, get you kind of familiar with the interface, and get familiar with sort of seeing, the kind of people you're going to see when you interview. But, the goal is really to be yourself. We're really just trying to have conversations with you to see if you're somebody that we would want to work with. It's really not about, the interview is really not about you needing to impress us by, this research project or that research project. Like residency is 4 years of clinical work. And so when we're meeting you, we want to see if this is somebody that we will want to be getting calls from in the middle of the night to tell us about our patients, and for us to see patients with you in your weekly clinic for 4 years. Like we want to see if you seem like somebody that we would enjoy working with, and kind of you would kind of be somebody that we would want to be with for 4 years. So that's really the goal of the interview, I think, because we can kind of see your achievements and your list of what you do. So really avoid the sort of urge to recite stuff from your CV at the interview. We just really want to get to know you as a human being. So I think that's sort of my main, and yes, tacos, like, I think a lot of people like tacos. I think that's like a non-controversial topic probably. But I think, I wish you all luck. You all, have various paths, different countries. Like, I think it must be so much harder to apply as an international physician. And just like, even now, I think it's much more competitive than back when I applied to medical school and when I applied to residency. I think it's a lot harder. So y'all are like, really smart, brilliant people that have done amazing things. And I'm always impressed by reading the applications. So definitely, I wish you all great luck. Hopefully you will join us again on Monday if you're interested in applying to UConn to hear a little bit more about sort of the nuts and bolts of our program. And, I wish you the best for match 23.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Dr.
All right,
Schuyler.
thank you all.
Thank you
Have a great
all.
day.
Have a great day and happy Friday.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.